What's up, LeaderBite? We are back in action on the clipboard this week, talking about something that has been eating my brain. And that is when you and I get feedback, information passed back to us, are we allowed to approve or disapprove of that feedback by validation? And yes, you are. Yes, you are. Yes, I can. We are allowed at any stage when we receive information to decode that information and make sure that in our own perception it is valid before we jump into applying the feedback that we've received. Now, when we think about this, there are 4 different pieces of the quadrant here that we need to think about, or of the matrix, based on Anne Friedman's work about disapproval approval, and that is, does this person know me, or does this person not know me? And based on where that lands on that continuum, can indeed allow you to validate or invalidate the feedback that's received. But there are 2 big pieces to that, because there's a lot of people that don't know us that could provide us feedback, and definitely a lot of people that know us that provide us feedback. But is the feedback that's coming from them rational or irrational? And that can actually determine which quadrant and therefore what you do with that feedback. And so if you think about a person that you don't know but is really good at what they do, so you may be in an office environment where people have been around for 10, 15 plus years and they're very, very super sharp at what they do, and if they walked in and they gave you rational feedback based on their experience but they don't know you, could that be considered valid feedback? Well, the answer is yes, and we call these people here, we call these people here critics. Okay, these are the people in our lives that when they do provide us with feedback, it is critical to a sense, but it's really about the work or the product. Okay, it's not about us as a person, because they don't really know us as a person, so it has to be focused on the product. And then on the flip side of that, you know, there's another quadrant too. And that quadrant is right down here where somebody does know us and knows us really, really well, but is very irrational with the feedback or information that they provide. And this is a super tricky quadrant, because the people that know us very well and are providing us with irrational feedback versus rational feedback, they have a different agenda in mind, because they're not coming after the product like these critics are. These people down here is what we would consort or call frenemies. Frenemies, because they're not about the product, they're about knowing you and pushing the buttons and coming after your person. They want to undermine you, they're dishonoring you as a friend or as a person in that moment, because it's not about your work, it's about you personally. And so there's something else here. A second piece to that is we all have this internal dialogue, right? G-U-E. We have this internal dialogue, and if you don't know what internal dialogue, it's the voice right now that's looking at my hands saying, why is he doing all of these hands? That's the voice that I'm talking about with internal dialogue. This right here is a person that knows you very well and can sometimes really push this irrational button of information. And so therefore we become our own biggest frenemy. Because when we've done a behavior, when we've done a performance, when we've done a presentation, we are often our biggest critic, we will say, because we know ourselves very well. And instead of being rational about the information that we've just provided, we become very irrational, we talk ourselves down, and therefore frenemize ourselves or frenemy ourselves. And then there is this side here, people that don't know us and are very irrational. And that could be considered here, if you have a look just at the comments below, or if you comment below yourself. The YouTube comments that we receive sometimes on LeaderBite are inconceivable, because these are the haters. Okay, these are the people that are gonna hate, they're gonna hate, they're gonna hate, they're gonna hate. And they're often anonymous, and they troll you, and they wanna tear you down for every reason. Again, it is not necessarily about them knowing you, it's not necessarily about them knowing anything about you, but it definitely is counterproductive for you to engage with haters, because they're irrational and they don't know who you are and your agenda necessarily. So let's cross this quadrant out as something that we never want to consider when we're trying to validate whether the feedback is valid or not. And then of course that leads us to our last quadrant, the quadrant of people that know you, people that are very irrational, our lovers, our best fans, our biggest fans, our rock stars in our life that constantly come at us and say, I'm invested in you. I'm a person that values you as a person, but I also value the work that you're doing, and so I am going to constantly push you up, whether that's with some critical advice, but it's because I love you as a person that I'm going to continue to make sure that what I'm saying resonates with your professional and personal growth. So, as a rule of thumb, when you're receiving negative feedback that falls into one of these two categories, typically it's valid feedback. There is another two categories though that really comes around this idea of irrational, but we have to be careful, because is it our perception that makes it rational or irrational, or is it because of our relationship with them that makes this quadrant not as applicable or valid to the feedback that they're providing? Lots to think about, lots to analyze when you are talking performance reviews, when you're talking about that sly little jab from your brother or sister. Is the feedback valid, and can I approve or disapprove? Hopefully this will help. I'd love to hear some comments down below as of what else do you consider when you're trying to validate feedback. Looking forward to next week on LeaderBite. We got a couple of really fun episodes, so come back next week and we'll see you then. Cheers.